my cheating wife with her ex, and framed me with $180,000 debt. So I exposed them and watched it burn. I didn't go looking for the truth, but it found me in the most unexpected way. My name is Michael. I'm 34 years old, and I work as a lawyer at one of the largest firms in the city. After 5 grueling years climbing from a broke law student to my current position, I thought I had everything figured out. A successful career, a beautiful home, and most importantly, my perfect wife, Wendy. Wendy is 32, a gentle elementary school teacher who's been pursuing her PhD in education for the past 2 years. Everyone who meets her thinks she's the epitome of the perfect woman. Intelligent, caring, soft-spoken, always supporting her husband through thick and thin. She stood by me during those brutal years when I was working 3 jobs while studying law, when we lived in a cramped studio apartment and survived on instant noodles. She never complained, never asked for more than I could give. Our marriage was what everyone envied. Friends would joke about how lucky I was to find someone like Wendy, how she was wife material in every sense. She had this way of making our small apartment feel like home, always greeting me with a warm smile after those 16-hour study sessions, rubbing my shoulders when the stress got overwhelming. Even now, with my 6-figure salary, she remained humble, claiming she didn't need expensive things as long as we had each other. I trusted her completely. In a world full of deceit and betrayal that I witnessed daily in my legal practice, Wendy was my sanctuary, my constant. When she told me she wanted to pursue her PhD, I didn't hesitate to support her financially. Education was an investment in our future together, I reasoned. The tuition was expensive, but I could handle it. After all, she had sacrificed so much for my success. But trust, I've learned, can be the most dangerous weapon when placed in the wrong hands. The first crack in my perfect world appeared about 6 months ago, though I didn't recognize it as such at the time. Wendy started staying late at the university more frequently, claiming she needed to use the research facilities. Her dissertation advisor was very demanding, she explained, requiring extensive research sessions that sometimes stretched past midnight. I admired her dedication, even felt guilty that I couldn't be more supportive given my own demanding schedule. Then came the subtle changes. The woman who used to greet me with enthusiasm when I came home began offering distracted smiles, her attention always somewhere else. Conversations that once flowed naturally became stilted, punctuated by long pauses where she seemed lost in thought. When I'd ask about her research, she'd give vague responses about pedagogical frameworks and educational methodologies that sounded rehearsed rather than passionate. The distance grew more pronounced. Wendy, who used to curl up next to me while I reviewed case files, now spent evenings in the spare room she'd converted into a study space. She'd emerge for brief kisses goodnight, claiming exhaustion from her research. Our weekend date nights became sporadic, replaced by her sudden need to attend academic conferences or meet with study groups. What truly caught my attention was her irritability whenever I mentioned finances. Previously, Wendy had been completely transparent about expenses, even apologetic about the cost of her education. But lately, questions about tuition payments or research expenses triggered defensive responses. "You don't understand the academic world," she'd snap. "Or can't you trust me to manage my own education?" The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening in March. I'd returned from court earlier than expected to find Wendy hunched over her laptop in the kitchen, typing furiously. The moment she heard my key in the door, she slammed the laptop shut with unusual haste. When I asked what she was working on, she claimed it was a sensitive research paper that couldn't be discussed until publication. But it was the necklace that really made me pause. A delicate gold chain with a small pendant that I'd never seen before. When I complimented it, asking where she'd gotten such a beautiful piece, Wendy touched it self-consciously and mumbled something about finding it at a thrift store. The response felt wrong. Wendy had never been interested in jewelry, and the piece looked expensive, certainly not something from a second-hand shop. That weekend, while Wendy was at another research session, I decided to back up some important work files from our shared computer onto an external hard drive. It was routine maintenance, something I did quarterly to ensure we didn't lose important documents. The hard drive was old, one we'd used throughout law school, and I hadn't touched it in over a year. As the backup program ran, I noticed it was recovering deleted files, photos and documents that had been removed but not completely erased from the system. Curiosity got the better of me. Most were old law school assignments and vacation photos, nothing significant. But then I saw file names that made my blood run cold. Photo files with dates from the past 2 years, labeled with locations I didn't recognize. Message threads that had been deleted from Wendy's email account but cached on the hard drive. And then, buried in a folder marked research notes, I found correspondence that had nothing to do with education. The name Bob appeared repeatedly in the recovered messages. Bob, Wendy's college boyfriend, the one she'd dated for 3 years before we met. The man she'd described as ancient history whenever his name came up in conversation. According to these messages, Bob was very much present history. I spent the entire night reading through the recovered data, each message a knife twist in my chest. The affair had been going on for nearly 2 years, starting shortly after I'd begun working the high-profile cases that kept me at the office until midnight. The messages were intimate, planning secret meetings, expressing frustration about having to pretend with me. But the betrayal went deeper than infidelity. Hidden in the message threads were discussions about money, large sums of money that Bob needed for some kind of business venture. Wendy had assured him she could handle the financing through her husband's resources. They discussed loan applications, forged signatures, and the best ways to funnel money without detection. My hands shook as I opened banking records I'd never seen before. Loan applications in my name, using my social security number and employment information, for amounts that made my stomach lurch. The applications listed the funds as educational expenses, PhD tuition, research materials, conference travel. My signature appeared on documents I'd never signed, expertly forged but unmistakably not written by my hand. The money, over $180,000 across multiple loans, had been transferred to accounts I didn't recognize. Further digging revealed these accounts belonged to Bob, who had used the funds to invest in a cryptocurrency trading scheme with several partners. Wendy was listed as a co-investor, her portion funded entirely by the fraudulent loans taken in my name. Listen, when I finally pieced together what these two had been cooking up behind my back, I almost had to admire the sheer audacity of it all. Almost. Their little scheme was so straightforward it made me physically sick to think about how long they'd been planning this betrayal. Here's how these masterminds figured they'd play me. Wendy keeps up her loving wife act. You know, the sweet kisses goodbye, the "how was your day, honey" routine, all that domestic theater, while she's busy funneling my hard-earned money into Bob's cryptocurrency fantasy land. She'd string me along just long enough for every last fraudulent loan to clear, every stolen dollar to disappear into their joint investment accounts. Then came the really beautiful part of their plan. Once Bob's brilliant business venture supposedly started printing money, my dear wife would suddenly discover we had irreconcilable differences. Boom, divorce papers on my desk. In the split, she'd claim her rightful half of everything we'd built together over 5 years of marriage. The house, the savings, the investments, all of it. Meanwhile, guess who gets stuck holding the bag for nearly $200,000 in fraudulent debt? That's right, me, the loving husband whose name was conveniently attached to every single loan document. Even if I somehow managed to prove those signatures weren't mine, which would be like trying to prove a negative, I'd be looking at years of legal battles that would cost more than just paying off the damn loans in the first place. They had me boxed in from every angle, or so they thought. I sat in my home office until dawn, staring at the evidence of my wife's betrayal. The woman I'd loved unconditionally, supported through everything, had been systematically destroying my financial future while conducting an affair with her ex-boyfriend. Every research session, every late night at the university, every defensive response about money suddenly made perfect sense. The rage came in waves, but underneath it was something colder, the analytical mind that had made me successful in law. Emotional responses would only hurt my position. If Wendy and Bob thought they were playing chess while I played checkers, they were about to learn otherwise. I called in sick to work the next day, something I'd never done for personal reasons. Instead, I spent the time methodically documenting everything. Screenshots of every recovered message, bank records, loan documents, even GPS data from Wendy's phone that showed her real locations during her supposed research sessions. I created encrypted backups of everything and stored them in multiple secure locations. The legal consultation came next. I approached one of the senior partners at my firm, a woman named Patricia, who specialized in fraud cases. Under the guise of discussing a hypothetical client situation, I outlined the loan fraud scheme. Patricia's eyes hardened as I described the forged signatures and false loan applications. Identity theft and loan fraud, she said without hesitation. Federal crimes with serious penalties. If someone used forged documents to secure loans, they're looking at significant jail time. The victim would have multiple avenues for legal recourse, including criminal prosecution and civil recovery of damages. I asked about the time frame for challenging fraudulent loans. Patricia explained that with proper documentation, fraudulent debts could be disputed and transferred to the actual perpetrators. The key was proving the fraud before making any payments that might be construed as acceptance of the debt. Perfect. I had all the proof I needed. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy at home. Every morning I kissed Wendy goodbye and wished her luck with her research. Every evening I asked about her day and listened to her fabricated stories about professors and academic conferences. She had no idea that I knew she was spending those hours in Bob's apartment, planning their financial future with my stolen money. I even went so far as to show increased interest in her education, asking detailed questions about her dissertation topic and offering to help with expenses. Wendy seemed pleased by my renewed attention, probably interpreting it as guilt for being absent during her academic journey. The irony was suffocating. During this time, I learned more about Bob through careful investigation. He was 33, worked in marketing for a tech startup, and had a history of failed business ventures funded by other people's money. The cryptocurrency scheme he'd invested my money in was already showing signs of collapse. Several investors were demanding returns that Bob couldn't provide. The man my wife was destroying our marriage for was himself on the verge of financial ruin. 3 weeks after my discovery, I implemented my plan. I chose a Friday evening when Wendy claimed she needed to attend a weekend academic retreat. She packed her bags that morning, kissing me goodbye with the same practiced affection she'd been displaying for months. Instead of going to any retreat, I knew she'd be spending the weekend at Bob's apartment, probably celebrating what they thought was their approaching payday. The loans had finished processing, the money was in Bob's accounts, and they believed they were home free. I waited until I was certain she'd arrived at Bob's place, then began the final phase. I uploaded every piece of evidence to our shared computer, organizing it in folders clearly labeled with dates and descriptions. Bank fraud, identity theft, adultery evidence, financial conspiracy. I wanted there to be no confusion about what she'd find. The centerpiece was a photo I'd taken of Wendy wearing that gold necklace, the one she claimed came from a thrift store. I'd used facial recognition software to match it with recovered photos showing Bob fastening the same necklace around her neck in his apartment. Below the photo comparison, I placed a simple note. Thrift store jewelry? Really? Next to the computer, I left copies of all the loan documents with the forged signatures highlighted, along with handwriting analysis I'd commissioned that definitively proved the signatures weren't mine. I included Patricia's business card and a note indicating that federal fraud charges would be filed Monday morning. The final touch was a single sheet of paper on the keyboard, containing the bank account numbers where my stolen money was sitting and the contact information for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. At the bottom, I wrote, "Thanks for showing your true face before it was too late." Then I packed a bag, took all my important documents, and checked into a hotel across town. I turned off my phone and waited. I didn't have to wait long. Saturday afternoon, my phone, which I'd turned back on briefly, exploded with calls and texts from Wendy. The messages progressed from confusion to panic to desperation. She'd found the evidence and realized her entire scheme had collapsed. The first message was almost comical. "Michael, I can explain everything. Please call me." By the 10th message, the tone had shifted completely. "You don't understand the situation. We need to talk immediately. This is all a misunderstanding." The final messages were pure desperation. "Please, I'm begging you. Don't do this. We can work something out. I love you." I deleted every message without responding. There was nothing left to discuss. Monday morning, I filed a police report for identity theft and loan fraud, providing all the evidence I'd gathered. The detective assigned to the case was impressed by the thoroughness of my documentation. "We rarely see fraud cases this well documented," he admitted. "Usually victims don't realize what's happened until it's too late to build a proper case." By Tuesday, both Wendy and Bob had been arrested. The charges included conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, forgery, and multiple counts of loan fraud. Bob's cryptocurrency venture had indeed collapsed over the weekend, leaving him unable to return any of the stolen money even if he wanted to cooperate. The legal proceedings moved faster than I'd expected. Faced with overwhelming evidence and the prospect of federal prosecution, both Wendy and Bob accepted plea deals that included full financial restitution and significant jail time. The loans were invalidated due to the fraudulent applications, and the lenders agreed to pursue recovery from the actual perpetrators rather than me. Wendy tried to contact me several times through intermediaries, mutual friends, her family, even her lawyer. The message was always the same. She was sorry. She'd made a terrible mistake. She wanted to make things right. But I'd learned something important about myself during those weeks of investigation. I wasn't the forgiving type when it came to calculated betrayal. The divorce was finalized while Wendy was serving her sentence. Since the marriage had been dissolved due to her criminal activity, I retained all our shared assets. The house, the savings, even her car, everything stayed with me. She emerged from prison with nothing but the clothes on her back and a criminal record that would follow her forever. Bob's situation was even worse. The failed cryptocurrency scheme had left him owing money to some very unforgiving investors. His association with Wendy had cost him not just his freedom, but any chance of rebuilding his life. Last I heard, he'd moved back in with his parents and was working at a grocery store, trying to pay off debts that would take decades to clear. 6 months after the arrest, I received one final message from Wendy. It came through her sister, who called to say Wendy wanted me to know she was sorry and hoped I could find happiness. The sister seemed genuinely surprised when I laughed at the message. "Tell Wendy," I said, "that I found happiness the moment I discovered who she really was. The truth, even when it's painful, is always better than living a lie." I never heard from either of them again. Today, I'm sitting in my home office, the same room where I discovered the evidence that changed everything. The house is quiet, peaceful in a way it never was during those final months with Wendy. I've redecorated, removing every trace of our shared life and replacing it with things that reflect my actual preferences rather than the compromises of marriage. My career has flourished without the distraction of a deteriorating relationship. The skills I developed investigating Wendy's betrayal have made me better at my job, more thorough in building cases, more skeptical of convenient explanations. Partners at the firm have noticed the change, and I've been handling increasingly complex cases with great success. Sometimes people ask if I miss being married, if I ever think about dating again. The question always makes me smile. I spent 5 years married to someone I thought I knew completely, only to discover she was a stranger wearing the mask of a loving wife. The experience taught me that solitude is vastly preferable to the wrong company. I don't lose sleep over what happened. I don't wonder what I could have done differently, or whether I should have been more attentive to our relationship. Wendy's betrayal wasn't the result of neglect or miscommunication. It was a calculated scheme that would have proceeded regardless of my behavior. She made her choices with full knowledge of the consequences, and she received exactly what those choices deserved. The gold necklace that started my investigation still sits in my desk drawer, placed there by the police after being collected as evidence. Sometimes I look at it and remember the woman who claimed to love me while systematically destroying my life. It serves as a reminder that people aren't always who they appear to be, that trust should be earned rather than freely given. But mostly, it reminds me that I survived. I was once the victim of an elaborate betrayal designed to leave me financially ruined and emotionally destroyed. Instead, I'm the one who emerged stronger, wiser, and completely free. My wife thought she was playing a game where she held all the cards, but she forgot one crucial detail. I'm a lawyer, and lawyers are very good at building cases. The final irony is that Wendy actually did teach me something valuable, though not what she intended. She taught me that some people will smile to your face while stabbing you in the back, that the most dangerous enemies are those who share your bed, and that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly who they are. You know what's funny? When folks corner me at parties or bump into me at the grocery store, they always get this concerned look in their eyes. Then comes the inevitable question, delivered with that careful tone people use when they think they're walking on thin ice. "Michael, do you ever feel bad about how things went down? Any regrets?" I usually take a sip of whatever I'm drinking, let the silence hang there for a beat, then give them the most honest answer I can manage. Hell no, I don't have regrets. Not a single damn one about how this whole mess played out. Sure, if I could rewind the tape, there are definitely things I'd change. I'd wish my radar had been sharper from day one. I'd wish those red flags hadn't looked so much like regular flags to my trusting eyes. I'd wish I'd been smarter about protecting my assets, my identity, my whole financial foundation from the very beginning. But those investigation months? The sleepless nights spent building an airtight case? Watching their faces when they realized their house of cards was collapsing? The sweet satisfaction of seeing handcuffs click around their wrists? Not 1 second of remorse there. Every calculated move I made, every piece of evidence I gathered, every strategic decision that led to their downfall, those were some of the most purposeful actions I've ever taken in my life. Some people might call it cold, but I call it exactly what they had coming. Some might call my response harsh, but I call it justice. Wendy and Bob gambled with my life, my finances, and my future. They lost that gamble, and they paid the price. In a world where betrayal often goes unpunished and victims are left to suffer in silence, I found a different path. I'm no longer the man who trusted blindly and loved unconditionally. I am the man who learned to protect himself, who chose justice over forgiveness, who refused to be a victim twice. That transformation, painful as it was, has been worth everything. The house is quiet tonight, but it's the peaceful quiet of a man who has won his war rather than the tense silence of a marriage built on lies. Tomorrow I'll wake up in my own bed, in my own home, with my own money and my own accounts. I'll go to work at a job I love, handling cases for clients who pay me well for skills I've earned through years of hard work. Wendy will wake up in whatever small apartment she can afford on her minimum wage salary, looking at job applications that she'll never get due to her criminal record. Bob will wake up still owing money to people who don't accept excuses, still trying to rebuild a life that will never recover from his association with our scheme. And I'll sleep well tonight, as I have every night since this began, because I am exactly where I deserve to be, free, successful, and completely vindicated. See, the truth isn't just some abstract concept people throw around when they want to sound wise. No, the truth has teeth. It bites back. And when it finally sank its fangs into my situation, it didn't just liberate me from Wendy's web of lies. It handed me a completely different existence. One where every decision is mine, every success genuinely earned, every moment lived without the constant weight of someone else's hidden agenda dragging me down. I wake up each morning in a space that breathes authentically. No more walking on eggshells around fabricated emotions. No more pretending that stilted conversations and rehearsed affection constitute genuine intimacy. People look at my life now and sometimes whisper about how isolated I must feel, how sad it is that I haven't found someone new. They don't get it. They can't see that what they're calling loneliness is actually the purest form of freedom I've ever experienced. This whole thing, from that first suspicious necklace to watching them both get hauled away in handcuffs, it's not your typical tale of a broken heart slowly mending. This is something sharper. Something more satisfying. I didn't just survive what Wendy and Bob tried to do to me. I took their betrayal and used it as raw material to construct something better than what I had before. That reality, that complete reversal of their intended outcome, cuts deeper than any tearful apology or desperate explanation they could ever offer me. It's the kind of justice that money can't buy and forgiveness could never match.